Good evening, everyone. I just want to try to be very cognizant of everybody's time. We have a lot of material to get through. I do realize that there are people still kind of filing in, but we do want to try to get started so that we can get through all the information for everybody. So my name is Stephanie Pico. I'm the mayor of Centennial, and I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank all of you for coming, to thank you for your continued commitment to this process, and for really caring about your community and being a part of the streets of SouthGlenn. Just a show of hands, curiosity's sake, how many people participated in the community outreach when the mall was redeveloped into the streets of SouthGlenn today? A special thank you to you guys for hanging in there that long and still being a part of the community and active and caring about what happens here. So with that, at some point in the future, the City of Centennial and the City Council and I will have to sit as judges over some type of land use decision over the streets of SouthGlenn. And for that reason, it is important for council to be fair and impartial during any kind of hearing. And so that is why we're not going to participate in the meeting here this evening. So I will be leaving shortly, but I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce the city manager, Matt Sturgeon. And again, he's going to lead off the meeting for you guys, but I really wanted to thank you and let you know that council really does appreciate the fact that we have so many community people interested in this project and are willing to take the time out of their day to be here with us this evening. So thank you, and I will be leaving. Thank you. All right,
thank you, Mayor. I'm going to try to multitask. We got a bulky mic, and I got some papers in front of me here. I wanted to follow up a little bit first on why the mayor's leaving. I think it's important for this audience to know this is a pretty confusing process. Land use isn't easy, and for us that are in it every day, we get it. We follow the policies, procedures, and laws that are set out in the local municipal code, state statute. The Constitution of the United States even plays a role sometimes. And that process is really important. Everybody in this room has the right to petition your city council with an ask for how you want to use your property or do other things in the city that might require a change to code, ordinance we call it. And sometimes, I'm sorry? Can you speak up a little? Is that better? All right. Much better. I can hear myself too now. The process for the council right now in a land use process requires them to sit as judges. That means they have to hear the evidence together, and that's for you, for the people not in this room, and for the people asking the city, in this case, Alberta and Northwood, to use their properties on the north and south side of SouthGlenn in a particular way, that body hears all of the information at the same time in the same way. And I know that's very hard because you elected these people to represent you, and they want to hear from you, but when you elected them, they took an oath to comply with the Charter of Centennial, which requires them to sit in this capacity. And I can tell you it's been very hard on them. They will view this is being recorded tonight. They will get to hear your comments and questions, your concerns, but they will hear that in a way that they can take it in, but they can't be influenced in the way you're saying it. They can't be brought off for conversation and sidebar that could compromise the manner in which due process is afforded a land use hearing. Again, I know it's very confusing. It's not liked. It's very hard for you to go through a process like this, but it's very important. All of us in this room at some point will want that right afforded to us. Private property rights in the state of Colorado, in the United States, are held precious. We all care about that. And anybody that's wanting to do something with their property deserves the right to be able to ask. And then you have the right to ensure that what they're doing with their property doesn't affect you or more importantly, for the city of Centennial, cities around the state, cities around the country, the health, safety, and welfare, we call it, of the community. And you get to present information where you think that might be occurring as you hear an activity happening on a piece of property, as would anybody in this room if you
Let's hold on to questions until we get to the question
Well,
session.
since we're going to be videoed and submitted to the process, are the developers going to get to talk directly to the same people, the mayor who just left?
Yes.
in
They
this
talk directly, but we don't.
no in this fashion.
So let's just truck
Yeah.
on, because there's a whole tonight we're going to do. I'm going to let you off the hook, Matt.
No,
And then because I'm going to answer that question.
yeah.
That question will get answered.
So there's been a lot suggested. I need to make this point, particularly because of this comment, and I want to start this off in a positive way. It's very hard, but we do care about the process. The staff cares deeply about the process. We've been emboldened to follow that process. So we care about what you say. We have to care about what the applicants say. We care about the people that aren't in this room and what they have to say. And we're going to take all of that information back. And the other part I want to leave you with that's, I don't know why this is breaking in and out.
Just keep going.
I'll turn this over so we can start with the program. But this is a community meeting. The developers are going to take your information and try to take that information and use it to prepare their formal application. So it's important tonight that you understand that this is a community meeting to give feedback as they prepare an application. There will be public hearings with the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council where that testimony will be part of a public record and play into how the City Council ultimately rules on this application. This is important to you because I want you to leave with the understanding that there is more to come that you need to pay attention to, and that will be talked about at the end of this meeting as well as a reminder. There will always be information on our website. We're always open as a staff to answer questions offline to anybody in this room that doesn't feel comfortable tonight speaking in a public forum like this. Please call the city, reach out, ask a question, send an email. We're glad to answer those questions. The dialogue's always open. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jody Erickson, who's going to facilitate this evening's meeting. You're going to hear a lot from the developers that I hope is informative for you, gives you a better sense of what they're intending to do on the site, and give them feedback. The last thing I'd ask is that there's been a lot of information disseminated through the power of social media, some of it factual, some of it not. I'd ask if you're capable and willing that you go to the streets of SouthGlenn after you hear this presentation and come to the city's website and look at the information for yourself, or talk to some of us with questions you might have, and talk to the merchants at SouthGlenn and really experience the place against what's being asked to do on the property. Take that time and really contemplate what it is that you love about that center and what you want to maintain and how it impacts your community, and use that to generate comments for this process. I think it's a wonderful place that we've all enjoyed. We live in a very difficult environment where conversation is hard, but really think about the practical use you have with those places, with that center, and think about what's being presented tonight to help you form your comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, all. My name is Jody Erickson. I do facilitation, mediation, and public engagement for policy around the country. So I don't work for the developers or for the city. So I'm here just to keep us on track and to support this kind of community work that you're doing. As Matt said, this is pre the official. So you guys get some comments before it goes to the formal submittal. So I'm going to talk about purpose and what we're going to do, and then we're going to move. So the purpose of tonight is to build understanding of what's going on at this point, because it keeps shifting, and then give feedback to the developers so that they can continue to tweak their proposal going into the formal submittal. We're going to do that. There's going to be 3 pieces. So there's going to be presentation to give you all the data that they know. Then we're going to do some questions only, so you can ask sort of direct questions to get a better understanding of sort of where they are. And then we're going to do feedback. So for those of you who, like me, where patience is not your asset, this is going to be a little tough for the first chunk. But for the first third, we're going to do some presentation and hopefully answer at least a third of your questions right off the bat for the first bit. Then again, we'll do clarifying questions, the questions only, not comments, but just questions, and then we'll do feedback. Usually at this moment, here's some ground rules, here's the 10 do's and don'ts of a public meeting, but I know that you all love your community. How many love this community? I want you to think not about the buildings and the landscape. I want to think about the characteristics, the human behavioral elements of what makes this community great. I'm not going to tell you what to do and don't. I'm going to ask you to be that tonight. I have 3 small ones, other than being the community you love. 1, respect the speakers, which means silence your cell phones and keep side conversations down, and that's all speakers. Respecting the people who are sharing. Be succinct, because there's a lot of people in the room tonight, so a lot of people are going to have questions and not all of them will get answered tonight, and a lot of people will have comments. So think about when you're coming up to have a question or a comment to be succinct, to leave room for your neighbors. And the third one is, I forgot the third one, so luckily we're going to move on. Okay, we'll just move on. All right, so we're going to do presentations, hold all the questions, and then we're going to do questions. We'll alternate between microphones, and hopefully within the first 10 questioners, your second question will get answered, and then we'll do feedback. All right, so let's go. Let's get some information about where the developer presentations are now.
So first we have Don Provost representing Alberta Development.
Thanks, Stuart. Good evening, everyone. I've got the opportunity to talk to a lot of you and see a lot of you over the last several months. And for those of you I haven't, my name is Don Provost. I live not very far from SouthGlenn, and my company is headquartered in Greenwood Village. We originally acquired the former SouthGlenn Mall in a joint venture in 2006, 2007. Commenced the redevelopment and opened in 2009, and have continued to own it with the same ownership group for the last 10 years. So with that, I'm going to give a brief history, and I know a lot of you have lived here for a long period of time, and some have moved in recently. Oops. So SouthGlenn opened in 1974 with the original anchors being Sears, which is the topic of discussion this evening, Denver Dry Goods, for those of you who remember the Denver Dry, and May D&F. When we acquired it, it had Sears, Foley's, JCPenney, and Dillard's. And as you can see, we were not able to acquire the Sears or the Macy's building. So we redeveloped the entirety of the project except for the 2 office buildings, 3-story office buildings on either end of Easter. Park Meadows Mall opened in 1996, which created significant competition for this property and eventually resulted in its essentially its demise. In February 2006, the mall closed and Dillard's closed as well. Dillard's was the last anchor open. Picture of the JCPenney. picture of the entrance to the mall. The sign you can see in the upper kind of left right here, Shanghai Garden moved across the street into the center on the other side of University, and it still operates today. And I had dinner with my family there 2 weekends ago. So in 2006, when we started the redevelopment and tore down the balance of the buildings, you can see in this photo, this was the new, what's now Best Buy. That was Dick's, which has been converted to Marshalls and Ross. But this was the primary center court of the mall. Sears, that was the mall entrance to Sears, and this was the mall entrance to Macy's to orient everybody. And today, that's about where the fountain sits. And then the Commons Park sits about here. Theater sits right in here. This was the Bank of SouthGlenn, Wells Fargo, which you all know now. Wells Fargo is located here in a branch bank facility. We acquired this entire parcel from them and sold them an acre here, and then built the 3 buildings that are on the border of Arapahoe and University. And out here is where Trice Jeweler is. Whole Foods sits approximately right there where it says Boulevard to orient everybody. Easter and University. Here it is today, looking south, so Macy's in the foreground. Here, the Portola Apartments, Whole Foods, Sears in the background, the theater, parking structure, 24-hour fitness, University. So major, complete transformation of what it was previously into a gridded block, mixed-use town center. So as I mentioned briefly a few minutes ago, we're based in Greenwood Village. We've developed about 10 million square feet. Notable projects in this general metro area include SouthGlenn's out at Smoky Hill and 470, for those of you that have ever been out that way in the southeast part of the city. As well as Arapahoe and Parker, a project called Corner Star, and have developed in 8 or 9 communities in the Front Range. I think it's important to note that I grew up on the west side of town here and moved into this part of town, the south central part of town, and raised my family, 4 children who have 3 of them have graduated from high school. One's a sophomore in high school today. And have had my business in the southeast corridor now for the last, 20, 25 years. So SouthGlenn has a unique place in the career of our company and in my career, in that it's the closest project to where I live and work of any project I've ever done. And I'm or some of my family members or my wife are at SouthGlenn probably 5 or 6 times a week, every single week. It's our movie theater, it's our grocery store, it's our Best Buy if we're going to Best Buy. I'd go to a Chinese restaurant here, but it's across the street in Shanghai Garden, and that's where we go. And have been going there since it was in the mall back in the day. So this is very important to us, and we don't want to do anything but continue to make this an incredible community gathering place. And as all of you know, anybody who's attended a summer concert here, or the Christmas tree lighting ceremony, or skated at the ice rink, or had their kids take their homecoming photos around the fountain, or a couple weeks ago we had over 5,000 kids show up to Spooky Streets. And the community engagement part is very important to us. So as Matt mentioned, we're here to listen. We've tried to continue to listen, and certainly anybody who wants to, as Matt offered in the city, anybody who wants to pick up the phone and call me or email me, I'm happy to sit down. If you have one question, you have one question. If you want to sit down and grab coffee, I'll sit down and grab coffee with you. I'm available and would love to hear what anybody has to say. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Northwood. And is Brian talking? Yeah,
Brian?
Thanks.
Can everyone hear me? Great. So my name is Brian Cleary. I work for Northwood Investors. We own the Sears parcel at the streets of SouthGlenn. Like it says up here, we are headquartered in Denver, and we have roughly 70 people in our office in Denver. Our CEO sits there, our CFO, our COO. Northwood builds, owns, and develops, manages various types of real estate across the country. We primarily focus on office, retail, hotels, and mixed-use multifamily. And we're going to be talking about mixed-use multifamily most of the time today. In the Denver office, I work on all different asset types and asset properties, but there's a couple of our offices that focus on a specific asset class. So for example, we have a team that sits in Dallas that only does retail. We have a team that sits in Charlotte that only does office. And we have a team that also sits in North Carolina that does multifamily and mixed use. And so I'm gonna let Kyle talk a little bit about his office and how they come into play here.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Kyle Whitaker. I sit in our Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina.
Yep.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sit in our Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina office with Northwood Ravens, so we're under the Northwood umbrella, part of the Northwood family that Brian mentioned, and we work closely with the guys here in Denver on our projects across the country. We are a little bit unique in that we are not only a development company, but we also have a general contracting group and a property management group, so we oversee our projects from start to finish through development to construction to lease up, and we hold our properties long term, so we manage them throughout their life cycle. We also take a tremendous focus on design. I always tell the story that our CEO is an architect, so you can imagine that leads to some interesting decisions about how we do things, but what it has done is it's given us a philosophy that no two projects are the same. So we look at every single project and how are we going to design this project to fit in the context of where it is and within the community that it is. And that's what we're doing here at SouthGlenn, hopefully.
Awesome. So you'll hear from Kyle a little later, but I'm going to go through a couple slides. Whoops. All right, so who owns what? So just to orient you, when you're looking at this map, to your right is north. You'll see Arapahoe Road. To your left is south. You'll see Easter Avenue. Okay? And also to orient you, that star, that's the fountain. There are 3 owners of land in all of Streets of SouthGlenn, and none of them are the city. So it's all privately owned by individuals or companies. In the bottom left corner here, you'll see it's actually an office building. It's at the corner of Easter and University. It's in red in here, and none of the changes that we are going to talk about today, the proposed changes in the zoning, would be implemented in the red. Okay, so that's the last time we'll talk about that. Now all you're left with is Alberta and Northwood. So all of the purple that you see is owned by Alberta. None of the proposed changes that we're going to talk about today will be implemented within the purple. So all the purple will be remaining the same. The only things that we are proposing today and that we will hopefully submit in the next couple weeks is on the Macy's parcel and the Sears parcel. So the Macy's parcel is on the north side. It's in green. It's also owned by Alberta, and it includes the Macy's building and portions of the parking lot. On the south end of Streets of SouthGlenn, you see the Sears parcel. It's in blue, and that parcel includes the Sears building, some of the parking lot just to the south of it, and then there is a small office building at the corner of Race and Easter that will also be part of this proposed development. And so I want to just touch real quickly on how Northwood ended up owning the Sears here at Streets of SouthGlenn. About 2 years ago, we sat down, or people from our company sat down with some of the executives at Sears who were looking to sell a lot of their buildings. And we looked through thousands of Sears buildings all over the country. We bought 7. And we were very specific on which ones we wanted to buy. And this one just provided, I think, a great opportunity to complement what's already there. There are really 3 things that came into account when looking at this site. One, we've worked with Alberta before and Don's team, and we recognize how good of a job they've done with the Streets at SouthGlenn, and we wanted to be part of that. 2, it's local. We work here, we live here. There's many people in my office that live in Centennial or grew up in Centennial. There's some other friends of mine within the real estate industry that this project is very near and dear to their heart. So being able to affect a community that you live and work in is pretty incredible, and we're very happy to to own this site. Like Jody, I forgot my third point, so I'm just going to move on. So before we get into what we want to propose to change, let's just talk about what's allowed currently under the zoning. Currently under the zoning, it allows for 2 million square feet of office and retail. And in place right now is just over half of that, about 1.1 million square feet of office and retail. And this is across all the sites. So there's no Macy's, no Sears, this is across everything, okay? The zoning requires a minimum of 909,000 square feet of retail. And today, there's 948,000 square feet of retail. Now, the one caveat is that 307,000 square feet is the Sears, which is empty, and the Macy's. And so we'll talk more about that later, about some of our proposed changes, but it's important to keep in mind. Under zoning today, we're allowed to build 350 residential units. There's 202 that are already built in the Portola, which means that there's 148 left that could possibly be built today. And then last thing, the setbacks, there's 25-foot setbacks are required on all the major streets surrounding the streets of SouthGlenn. And the streets of SouthGlenn has an overall height limit of 100 feet. Now, there are several parcels within the streets of SouthGlenn that have stricter height limit coding, and so some are 50, some are 75 feet, and some are 100 feet. I think the tallest building is between 85 and 90 feet. So this just shows a timeline of how we've been able to receive feedback and kind of what the process has looked like up until this point. So on January 7th, in the top left corner here, you'll see we presented our vision to City Council. That's a presentation that's online, and you can see it. It was recorded. Since then, so everything, the two green bubbles are large community meetings. The first one we had was on March 19th. That was in the former Sears. And then here we are today. And the main purpose of these is to receive feedback, answer questions, and provide you guys with updates. So we definitely want to get to the question and feedback part, because I think that's the main reason that we're here, is to hear from all of you. You'll notice there's 5 dark blue circles that show they're indicated as small group meetings. So basically in the past year, we have met many times without the city, but between the developers, so Alberta and Northwood, and people in the community, just to listen. What are the concerns? What questions do we have? Can we clarify any information for you? It's just a way for us to gather information. So with that, right, what did we hear? We really heard 5 main things, okay? Number 1, height. Our previous submittal, we were asking for 100 feet of height, and we heard that was too high, okay? Number 2, units. We heard that 2,000 residential units was too many. We heard that. We heard a lot of concerns about what it would feel like and what the character would be like on Easter Avenue, which is the very south end of the streets at SouthGlenn. So many people worried about the walkability, what will it look like, and we've studied that, and we're excited to show you some renderings today that I think will relieve some of your concerns. We heard concerns about additional strain on our school. We also heard concerns about additional traffic, and we'll talk about both of those later. I think the thing that we heard the most was that we love the streets at SouthGlenn, and we do too. Well, like I said, we bought this Sears not with the intention to create 2 different properties, to make it feel like these are 2 totally separate things, but to work with Don and Alberta to make this feel like a cohesive development that we can still enjoy. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind. I'm going to pass it over to Kyle. He's going to run through some of the things that we changed, what's our updated proposal, and then run through some renderings.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Like Brian mentioned, in our community engagement over the last year and talking with everyone, we really heard kind of five things. I want to talk through kind of how our plan has evolved over the past few months since that initial presentation. So, as Brian mentioned, the first thing we heard was height. Just like he mentioned, there's a max height allowed within the development now of 100 feet. That's broken up into different locations on what's allowable where. The Sears and Macy's currently are allowed at 50 feet. When we made our initial discussions on this earlier this year, we talked about raising Sears to 100, Macy's to 75. We've since gone back, looked at that, really studied it, and kind of come in and settled on 75 feet, which what that allows us to do is execute a building that's 5 or 6 stories, which is going to be consistent with what you see out there today. The next thing was about the number of residential units that were initially proposed. We heard a lot about this. The initial proposal was 800 on the Sears, 800 on the Macy's. We've gone back, we've done it, Alberta's done it, studied our plans, and come back with a reduced number of reducing that by 35%. And I'll show the breakdown of that here in just a minute. The next thing we did, and we spent a lot of time on, was studying kind of the look and feel of the project. As part of the current zoning, there's a set of architectural guidelines that kind of govern the look and feel of every building at the streets of SouthGlenn, and that's one thing that us in Alberta do not want to change. That is staying exactly as it is so that everything complies. I won't dwell on this because we'll talk a lot more about the look and feel along Easter here shortly. Traffic concerns. Once again, there'll be a more in-depth presentation on that shortly after I finish, so I'll let them get to that. But I do want to say we worked with the city and we accelerated the timing on that traffic study. Typically that would occur during the site plan process. We worked with the city based on community feedback and moved that up to do it at this point in the process. And then lastly, we've also worked and talked with the utility providers in the area to make sure we understand the impacts, understand capacity, and then also worked with city staff to reach out to Littleton Public Schools and confirm that there is indeed capacity for additional residential development. So boiling that all down to kind of what our proposed ask will be, we're really looking to change 3 things in the entirety of the current zoning. First one is the height. As I mentioned, Sears and Macy's parcels, because they had the existing boxes, were capped at 50 feet. Max height is 100 feet on the side and in the central, so we're looking to bring up both Macy's and Sears parcels to 75 feet. Allows, once again, like I said, 5 to 6 story buildings consistent with what you see there today. Number of units. So once again, we've really studied our plan and come back with a total of 1,273 units. Worth noting on this that this number does include the 202 that are already on site at SouthGlenn today. And then finally, the minimum retail square footage that Brian put up earlier. And this is really a number just that reflects the Sears and Macy's 307,000 square feet going away to make sure that everything matches up. And we worked with the city to bring this up from our initial ask of 500,000 up 30%. So now I will run through. We've really worked, like I said, on Easter. And I don't know if we want to dim the lights a little bit so these are easier to see.
And just while you dim the lights, we will post these online by the end of the week, so they will be up. Maybe not tomorrow, but they will be up.
Yeah. So we focused a lot of our efforts on looking at kind of the look and feel along Easter, so you can kind of see where these views are. Understanding that's the southern point where SouthGlenn touches the other part of the community, or touches the community. So one thing we thought, while we're still very conceptual in the designs, we wanted to make sure we reflected this accurately as possible so people got a sense of what 5 stories looks like along Easter. So we had our design team, they flew some drones, we did topographic surveys pretty extensively, and laid those over some existing or some actual photos that we took to give you a good sense of what that would feel like. So this first view is, you can see down in the corner here is our little legend of where this is. On Easter, looking back to the west, the existing view. And this is the conceptual rendering kind of showing what a proposed development at Sears would look like. One thing I think everybody here is aware of that's ever driven this is that Easter sits higher than the majority of the Sears development. So as we really studied this, one thing we thought about and worked on was how do we work with that existing topography in order, instead of building up and starting at Easter, how can we work with that existing grade and kind of minimize the impact along Easter? So I think you see that reflected here. The other thing, I'll flip to this next graphic that Brian touched on earlier, is the 25-foot setback. I think it's important to kind of make sure everyone gets a sense of where the buildings sit in relation to the street and the adjacent neighborhoods. So the 25-foot setback starts at the property line, which is about 13 feet plus or minus from the back of curb. It's part of a roughly 80-foot right-of-way across Easter to the south side. So I wanted to make sure we kind of knew what the distance from the south side of Easter over here across is over 100 feet. The other thing we looked at on our design is really kind of focusing on the buildings themselves and what the character of the buildings would look like. So we spent a lot of time looking at how do we articulate the buildings, what can we do in the architecture so that this doesn't look like just a flat wall that runs 25 feet behind the right-of-way. So this is a view, our key moved over here, from Gaylord on the south side, looking back into the existing streets. And this gives us a good glimpse at one of the things we want to do from a site planning perspective, which is realignment of some of the streets. So a shift in Vine Street, a shift in Gaylord. And one thing that's always difficult in mixed-use projects is getting that street grid right, because you really need it to activate the streets. You need it to be intuitive so that people can navigate it. And Don and his team did a fantastic job, and I think everybody who's ever been to SouthGlenn knows this in kind of the core there, but you get to the ends and you're kind of bookended by these big parking fields that are somewhat intimidating and not walkable. So by realigning these streets, what we hope to accomplish is kind of connecting back to that existing street grid to make it walkable and kind of connect the site north to south. So this moving down Easter is a view of where the new Vine Street would be. This is Vine Street, if you can see in the distance there. That's the theater, the parking deck. So instead of having the jog, our proposal has us kind of aligning that, once again creating a good pedestrian flow through and connecting to the rest of the streets at SouthGlenn. Moving down, once again, I'll hit these last ones so we can keep moving, down to the existing Vine Street in a proposal. So once again, looking at building articulations, trying to focus on how does this interact with the street, how can we take advantage of the existing topography to minimize the impact on the street. And then lastly, down to the corner of Easter and Race, replacing the old office building, trying to use a lot of similar materials, once again governed by the architectural guidelines. And then lastly, on the Sears piece, before I flip it to Don and talk about their vision for the Macy's, we thought it was important to kind of show a view of what this looks like integrated with what everyone knows today. So this is the view kind of looking from inside the streets, just south of the fountain of the old Sears. So really trying to work here to kind of show how this kind of cohesively fits with SouthGlenn, and from a scale perspective and also from an architecture and materiality standpoint, we think what Don and his team have done at the streets of SouthGlenn is fantastic, and our hope is, our vision for the Sears is that this is the next step of it and is really just expanding upon that. So with that, I'll hand it back to Don to talk quickly about their vision for the Macy's parcel.
Thanks. Watch out. Okay, so now you're looking, this will be a view as you're standing out, maybe just outside the north entrance to the existing Macy's. So very, very, similar to what you see from the actual activation and engagement in the existing project. So we just took Macy's and said, yeah, we want it to, we'll all have, everybody's architect can have a little bit different interpretation of what it is, and over time, I think you want every street to take on a little bit of its own character, but with still meeting in the same, color, material, architectural guidelines, landscaping, and so forth, which I think it's important to point out that we're not proposing to change any of that, change any of the landscaping guidelines, which you guys have been out there. Landscaping's amazing, and will continue to be. But we've started looking at and exploring other potential opportunities, like here to do another fountain feature, down the block from the existing fountain would be back in here. And this may or may not become more retail. As you know, we've in a challenging retail environment, and we already have vacancy there. and so we don't want to create any additional vacancy. But again, on these corner locations, out facing Arapahoe, typically would become better retail locations than some of the others in the internal part of the project. Another potential similar view, again, looking back towards the center of the project, the fountain being down here. Another view, maybe this becomes more office. This is maybe office on the lower level, maybe retail, residential above, and then a different look at maybe it's not a fountain, it's more of a soft-seated, casual gathering area, heavily landscaped and protected from the traffic. So I touched on a little bit earlier, so what will not change? The landscaping's not going to change, the architectural standards won't change. The areas of retail other than Sears and Macy's, we will likely add some additional retail there depending on how we eventually build out. I want to make one quick clarification to something that Brian said earlier, where we had the green and the purple up there, and we own all of the green and the purple. And the lot configuration, the legal parcel that Macy's owns, doesn't encompass the entire parking lot out to the north of Macy's, and we'll likely get into that parking lot. So now that we own that parcel, we haven't vacated the property lines yet. We vacate those property lines, and so the area will go a little bit outside of the area that was depicted on the overall site plan. The setbacks from the streets won't change. I think there was an exhibit that they showed of the 25 feet. We're not proposing changing any of the setbacks, and we're also not proposing any changes to the current parking requirements. Why does this work for the community, for the city, and for the streets at SouthGlenn? That the new uses do and will positively impact. I think everybody can agree that a vacant Sears and potentially in the near term, nothing for sure, but potentially in the near term, Macy's may close as well, and so 300,000 square feet of vacant department store boxes that were built 40, 50 years ago is not a good current condition. Kyle talked a lot about the walkability that gets enhanced with some of the improvements. The long-term viability is key, and that's how we look at this, is how do we react to the current market conditions in 2019 and look forward into the next 3 or 4 or 5 years and take this really cool, gridded, mixed-use street plan and continue to move it to the north and the south. We weren't able to acquire the Macy's or the Sears when we originally developed it, or likely a lot of this would have been addressed then. Talked about the vacant Sears. The variety of housing product, multifamily housing product that'll get built here will, again, attract a lot of different folks. We've built and owned the Portola apartments now for 10 years and have everybody renting in there from 25-year-old millennials to 70-plus-year-old baby boomers and everything in between. It's a very unique mix of tenant residents, and we've continued to see that and attract that, and I'm sure the new product would attract age ranges, again, from the 20s all the way into the 70s. So this has been talked about a couple times by a couple different folks, so I'll just reiterate it. We will, following tonight's meeting and anything else that gets sent to the city, gets sent along to us, review. Kyle and Brian and Josh and the rest of their team and my team and our collective architects will sit down and discuss the feedback. We'll meet with our respective design teams, if the comments are on certain things, they'll address them on their parcel and we'll address them on our parcel. And then I think it was also mentioned, if something comes to your mind tomorrow or this weekend or next week, and you can submit a comment directly to the city, directly to us, like I said, and call me, whatever anybody wants to do, to continue to have their input. And I think, as the city mentioned too, this process, we're very early in the process. I think this is going to get talked about by the city, but one of the things that's important to note, to really re-emphasize our commitment to feedback, is the city's normal process is you have one community meeting. So any other project in the city can have their one community meeting and check the box. And early on, as we discussed with the city, we understood and appreciated the significance of SouthGlenn and its place in this community. And like I said, I didn't build this and sell it 2 years later, and I just didn't buy it last year. I've lived it 13 years, and we opened it in the worst possible, one of the worst recessions certainly in our country's history in 2009, and have continued to support it and continue to have, and haven't cut community events or haven't cut the floral program or anything else like that creates this amazing place out there, from a failed, blighted, dead mall that had a bingo parlor and a blue light velvet poster store in it. And some of you probably remember that. But I say that in the context of, we had a small group meeting, a city organized and directed small group meeting. We had a community meeting that a lot of you were at, that probably the structure of it probably wasn't as organized as it should have been. We thought this was a much better format to have a consistent presentation of the information. And now we're having this third community meeting, and in between, we as developers have had several meetings with Ron Phelps, and I thank Ron very much for being engaging and allowing us to be with his group and excuse me? So here's the thing. Yeah, sure.
Here's the thing. Raise your hand if patience is your virtue. Yeah, nobody, right? So there's two more pieces of data I want to get to you before we do questions. So the two more things that are coming are the traffic data and what's this whole process. So I know somebody's already caught my eye and wants to weigh in, but I want you to hold on because there's a little more data to go, and then we're going to do clarifying questions. I'm going to ask you to hold that, and then I'll make sure you're the first person in the clarifying question section. So that's because we started late. We wanted to make sure people were here. We wanted to make sure everybody was here. So I want to make sure you still get the data. So let's truck on.
I just want to, again, thank everybody, and we'll be sure and get to all of your questions. And like was said earlier, if we don't get to your question tonight, there's lots of other forums to address your questions. Thank you.
Thanks. And yes, there are comment forms around the room, so if we don't get to everything tonight, there are comment forms, so you can always make comments in the comment form and online. So let's talk about process and traffic data. Paul, is that you? Somebody correctly? Thank you. Thank you. Go, Jeff. Be short.
I'll be very brief. My name is Jeff Dankenbring. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Centennial. I'm also a resident of the SouthGlenn neighborhood as well. And so trust assured that this is in my backyard just like it's in many of your backyards as well. And so I understand can I just see by a show of hands, and I know we're getting impatient, but how many of you actually have traffic concerns for this area? I would expect to see everybody. And so I understand them traffic concerns, and I can appreciate that with you as well. It's one of them things that I want to make sure that I can get to Chick-fil-A in the morning and get my breakfast and take my family to the movie theater as well. And I know that we're living in traffic congestion all the time. It's one of them things that in Colorado it's getting prevalent as far as dealing with it on Dry Creek and Arapahoe Road and University. And so I understand your concerns, but I also want to make sure that rest assured that you guys are getting your comments in. We're addressing them comments. I know there's been a lot of steps and a lot of collaboration, with the developers here. I know that one of the first things they did was they went out and hired a premier traffic company. They hired Felsberg, Holt, and Ulevig, which is one of the best in Colorado. They even did the design for University and Arapahoe Road back in 2006. They did the city's transportation master plan as well. And so they're a great partner, and they're a great traffic engineer. And I think Paul Brown has a lot of great things to hear about it as well, as far as what he has to say. And so the couple points as far as public works goes, I just want to make sure that everybody has an understanding. We're not here on the public works side to differentiate as far as that this is a good or bad development. We're here to analyze the roads and make sure the roads can accept the additional traffic. And if not, we're here to mitigate that impact and make sure that we improve the roads and so it can accommodate the additional traffic as well. And so I want to be brief because I know everybody's time is critical here. One of the last things I want to have is in your handouts, there's some lingo, some terminology that I want to refer you to. And so as Paul's going through his presentation, please refer to that just so you can keep up with him as well. With that, I'll turn it over to
Paul and the next one to be brief. So I won't say a lot. So it's the backside of the agenda. If there's terminology.
Good evening. My name is Paul Brown. I'm with Felsberg, Holt, and Ulevig, and we did the traffic study at the request of the developer, and we've been working with the city to evaluate traffic flow around the streets at SouthGlenn. Really quickly, you've seen what the development is all about in terms of where it is. It's bounded by University Boulevard, Arapahoe Road, Race, and Easter. Our traffic study reflects 3 different years. We look at existing conditions, 2019. We look at the potential build out of the shopping center and the new units in 2022, and we look at the typical long-range planning horizon of 2040, and that's standard practice for the Denver region and actually nationally. We collected existing counts in 2018 and 2019 at 15 locations. We did what we call middle weekday counts, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, which is when traffic is typical. And we conducted supplemental counts to make sure that we captured school traffic from the schools that are around the area here. We then forecasted those volumes to 2022 and to 2040 for background conditions. And we used a growth rate that is based on regional forecasts that have been accepted by the Denver Regional Council of Governments, the planning organization for the whole metropolitan area. I'll jump really quickly into what level of service is. When we analyze intersections for traffic operations, we grade them from A through F. The city standard, which is typical across the country, is level of service D or better is acceptable. Level of service E or F is not acceptable. One other thing that we did look at in this study is safety. We identified operational issues at 2 locations, Arapahoe and Vine up here at the top, and at University and Davies down near the south end of the site. Both of those locations had traffic operational issues in existing conditions and in 2022 and 2040. The University and Davies intersection also had an existing safety issue. So we proposed mitigations for both of those intersections. At Arapahoe and Vine, as I said, it's operating below current city standard. So we are going to change the way the traffic signal operates there. Instead of having the northbound and southbound operate together, which is what they do now, so when the light turns green for northbound, it also turns green for southbound, we're proposing to change that operation so that northbound operates on its own and then goes red, and then southbound will operate on its own and then go red. The east-west approaches on Arapahoe Road won't change through any of that. What that allows is that northbound left turns don't have to fight southbound traffic, and southbound left turns don't have to fight northbound traffic. So it improves operations and it improves them to acceptable levels at this location. At University and Davies, as I said, we had an operational issue. We also observed a safety concern at this location with northbound left turn collisions, people trying to turn into the mall against 3 lanes of University traffic. For those of you that know the area, you know University is very busy. So we are proposing to mitigate that by turning that intersection into a right-in, right-out intersection. So you can only turn right in from University southbound, and you can only turn out from the mall and go south on University. So we would construct a median in University, and that would improve traffic operations, and it would also eliminate those movements that are exhibiting the safety issues. With the development scenario, it's already been described. We've had to evaluate a potential development scenario that represents the best or the highest possible use. That doesn't mean the developer is necessarily going to build that, but this is what the maximum is that we are going to look at. It includes the 1,200 units that has already been talked about, 128,000 square feet of new office space, and 151,000 feet of retail space. And that's combined between the north and the south part of the parcel. Those new developments will generate new trips, and I'm sure we're all aware of that, and that's probably why some of you are here tonight. We've looked at the number of trips that will be generated based on national standards from the Institute of Transportation Engineers to forecast what those trips will be. The guidance from ITE is required to be used in traffic studies by the city of Centennial. Once we've forecasted those trips, and you can see the different kinds of trips there, the residential, retail, and office. Once we forecast those trips, we assign them to the roadway network, and that distribution is based on that same Denver Regional Council of Governments model that we use to get the growth forecasts, and it has been reviewed by the city and accepted by the city. So there are changes in traffic volumes. There's going to be more traffic. We're not going to tell you that there will not be more traffic. There is going to be very limited traffic into and out of the adjacent neighborhoods. Our studies show typically less than 10 vehicles on the streets that go into and out of the neighborhoods to the west and to the south. Our increases on... Projected trips on Arapahoe Road and on University Boulevard are less than 10% of the total traffic out there in 2022. There will be some increases on Race and on Easter, but those increases are starting with a much lower volume because Race and Easter already today have much lower volumes. Race and Easter are a few hundred trips in the peak periods. Arapahoe and University are several thousand trips in the peak periods. So with our total traffic results, we've completed the analysis, and in that analysis, we have determined that there will be no additional need for mitigation from the streets at SouthGlenn, assuming the development scenario that we have evaluated, and that the development trips can be accommodated with acceptable level of service, which meets the city's threshold of level of service D. So that's the quick version. I'm sure there's questions. I'm going to turn it back over for the rest of the presentation, and then...
I know you have concerns and questions about that, so hang on to it. I have one final thing, and I'm going to push Michael to be as short as he possibly can be. And this is really, he just wants to give you the city process, because we're sort of pre the formal process right now.
Good evening, Michael Gratis, City of Centennial. Brevity is not my forte, but I'll make it happen, I promise. So I just want to quickly go over that over the years, SouthGlenn, they're having amendments to the plans. Amendments are common. It happens. Things change over time. How many of you, this is your first SouthGlenn meeting or first interaction about this project? Okay, so we've got some hands, but a lot of you are familiar, but I still want to go over it. So at the beginning of the year in January, the developer wanted to make a presentation to City Council just to give them an idea. So how about this? How many of you just want to get to questions? Okay.
Awesome. Okay, here's how we're going to do this. So first off, please remember, I didn't establish any other ground rules except be listening. So what we're going to do is do questions, which is a back and forth. But after half an hour, or if the questions become comments, we're going to just move to comments. So any clarifying questions before we get to comments? Just come up to these mics, and since only one of these is working, I'm going to move between them. Questions, and then we'll get to comments. So I'm going to start here, and then I'll walk over there. And you guys, there should be a mic up there with the thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to know who will be paying for the changes to the road for this project, such as the median and traffic light changes.
Great. Who's going to pay for the road changes? Stu. Stu's got the microphone.
Can you hear me? We haven't submitted to the city yet, but when we submit with the city, we'll have a conversation with who pays that. But we will likely, the developer will privately pay for the improvements that were noted.
Okay.
When exactly was the traffic study done? What are the exact dates?
Paul.
The study was conducted over the course of basically the last 4 to 6 months. So it was conducted this year.
The exact dates? Was it 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, every day?
The data collection in the field was done on 2 different days, one in July and one in August. And further documentation is in the study.
Okay. I get it. Hold on.
You need to know the dates. This is your study. You should know the exact dates. And it needs to matter when in August.
Okay.
Because
the ones in August were conducted after schools opened. And that was the point of conducting them. And there are further details in the document, which is available online.
So we'll make sure there's further documentation online.
Hi, I got here late and I apologize. 6 o'clock meeting's a little early for those of us who work for a living. First off, was there any discussion whatsoever about what you're doing for traffic for the proposed new apartments?
So that was the last presentation, was about traffic analysis.
I asked about parking at streets at SouthGlenn. I asked about parking for residents at streets at SouthGlenn.
Yeah, so the question was about parking. As Don hit it on earlier, we're not proposing to change any of the parking requirements in the current requirements, so which means that the new apartment buildings will have their own parking and they'll park themselves.
I have a second question.
Follow-up question, and then I will let you comment in a sec.
Well, this isn't a follow-up question to this. This has to do with traffic studies. Did you guys study further on down Arapahoe Road or University toward I-25 or toward C-470 where it stacks up? It's impossible to drive at this point. If you put that many more people, that many more trips at rush hour, we're going to have a huge nightmare compounding all the way from the freeways back.
Okay. Question.
I had a question. I didn't get an answer.
I'm sorry. I thought that was a comment.
Did the studies include any of this?
Did the study include I-25 and Arapahoe?
Arapahoe and between streets at Southglenn and the freeway.
The study, the boundaries of the study and the engagement letter of the study was published on the city's website, I don't know, several months ago. And the actual traffic study is available as well. And the traffic study did not, to answer your question, did not include I-25 in Arapahoe or University in 470.
That's horrendous. That has to be addressed.
Your suggestion would be to do so.
It has to happen.
Okay.
I've seen feedback that says that this number of apartment buildings is going to increase that neighborhood's population by up to 91%. Is that, if that's accurate, how in the hell can it just be a 10% increase in traffic?
Answer.
I have no idea what study you're referring to. We'd be happy to review it if you have a study that somebody
different
put
study?
together. Yeah, we don't have that study.
No, Paul's study said 10 trips, Paul? That's what you're referring to? Okay. Question.
No, I'm sorry, I meant that the 91%. He mentioned some study. I don't have it.
Based on population of the neighborhoods and an increase in the neighborhood density.
There's 1,300 homes in SouthGlenn, and you're talking about let me borrow that for a second. So let me do me a favor. So come on back up and clarify the question, and then I'm going to move on. Thank you.
Okay, with you guys adding 1,198 units or whatever, I think that's roughly right, and with 1,300 homes in that neighborhood, we're doubling 91%. We're almost doubling the amount of people in that neighborhood. How in the heck are you guys trying to tell us that that's only going to increase the number of the amount of traffic by 10%? That makes no sense.
I don't know what you're defining as a neighborhood.
His study that he just showed us in the last presentation said 10% increase in the traffic volume.
Correct, and that's what his study says, and he's a professional traffic engineer. I didn't perform the traffic study.
All right, then I'd like to ask it of you.
Paul, what's the answer?
We looked at the trips on University and Arapahoe and Eastern Race that are already out there, which I imagine includes the residents in the SouthGlenn area that are already in Portola and in the neighborhood around Portola. And then we added on top of that the additional units that were described in the PowerPoint. Those additional units result in an overall increase on University and Arapahoe of less than 10% of the total traffic.
So my guess is when we get to feedback, you're going to say no. So let me get through the clarifying questions, and then we'll jump to comments.
So when they redeveloped SouthGlenn, 10 years ago, evidently SouthGlenn strong-armed the city and they get all or most of the sales tax back. Tell me how much money SouthGlenn has got back from the city.
Are you talking about the Urban Renewal Authority deal that got done with the city?
Well, tell me all the money that you get back from the city or any other agency since you redeveloped it. How much?
We don't get money back from the city.
How about the sales tax?
The city shares the Urban Renewal Authority, which was created by the city, shares the sales tax collected in the agreement. That's all public record. With
Okay,
the
it's public
bondholders.
record, but how much is it?
I don't know the exact amount.
So why don't you get it and put it on the city website so that we know? Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Next question.
The next question is the city or the developers going to consult the state agencies of the health department, the air pollution control division, about our ongoing problem with carbon monoxide and ozone? And CDOT also has some wonderful data that should be consulted when we're considering increasing traffic.
Was CDOT, federal agencies, state agencies consulted?
So because the developer hasn't submitted a formal application, we're still very early in the process, even though it's been going on for a couple months. But CDOT will be consulted, as will about 24 other agencies with regards to reviewing it. It's not just the city, it's other entities that provide public services within the region and the state of Colorado that will receive notification of the application and will have the ability to offer comment and regulate as they are able to. I don't have an answer for you that on right now. I can't say one way or
Michael,
the
what
other.
was the toss in at the end? I didn't hear
The
it.
toss in was questions about air pollution, and I said
Okay.
I don't have an answer right now.
Okay, next question.
Hello, thank you for meeting with all of us. I have a few notes that I took. How much floor area ratio are you using, and what space are you allocating to common space? How many of the 1,000+ units will be allocated to public servants, and what are they going to do to control rent for our police, teachers, and fire department?
So wait, let me answer the first two, and then
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
come to the third. So go ahead and answer.
Florida area and common space.
Say it again.
And then
Say the first one again.
Florida area ratio, how much allocation for common space and what percentage of the total units being proposed will be allocated to public servants?
Okay, so I'll start with the first one about common space and open space in particular. So there's a requirement right now for 10% of the land area to be open space. Don't intend to change that, so at a minimum of 10%. 10% was the answer based on what's in the current requirements. As far as how much will be, I think it was dedicated to public servants was the question. Affordable housing. So right now we don't have plans for affordable housing. We're still studying it. Once again, this is early in the process, but at the plan we're looking at market rate housing similar to what is there now.
Next question.
Sure. Just to follow up on that, is that something you guys would be willing to consider?
Affordable housing?
I mean, y'all are considering everything that's public forum, so I guess the answer is yes.
Yeah, it's something that we always will study on each project.
Okay, and then my last question is, how do you guys plan on parking the new development? Is the 25-foot increase for a tiered parking deck? Or are you planning on parking surface?
The plan was for the residential piece, and I believe for the Macy's side as well, would be parking structures internal to it's what we call a deck wrap project. So the deck is actually keep pulling away. The parking deck is actually wrapped inside of the building, so you don't really see the parking deck from the street.
Okay, next question. Thank you.
So you purchased the property in about 2017. I'm just curious how much effort was ever expended to keep the development plan as is as a retail space. Did you provide any effort at all to try and release these properties as retail?
We have. When we bought the property, it was what we call a sale leaseback transaction, which means we buy it from Sears, and Sears agrees to lease the property from us for X amount of years. 2 years or a couple months after we had owned the property, Sears said we are bankrupt, and we left. We've been trying to put retail in there. We have someone in our office in Denver that has been trying to. I'm sure you saw there was a pop-up Halloween store. I don't think those are the best uses, but that's all that's there right now. In terms of what is in the market, we can't find someone to lease 131,000 square feet of retail there. It's been very difficult for us.
Okay, looked but hard. Next question.
I want to know where parking will be for people using the streets of SouthGlenn.
So you said there was parking structure, Keith, right? You were putting in parking structures?
For the existing project?
Existing. For the new residential and new retail?
Okay, I want to know in this new plan where we will park when we want to go to the streets of SouthGlenn.
Yeah,
because you didn't show anything in your map that would indicate any parking.
Let me see if I can find a graphic here.
He just turned it off. Oh, there it is.
Oh, this way. Bottom line is the existing parking won't change. So the parking in front of Whole Foods, the parking in front of Old Navy, the parking structure adjacent to the theater, the parking in front of Best Buy and the Macy's Home Store, none of that's going to change. Here we go. How do I get to 11?
Go down 3.
So all of this parking here that exists today stays. This parking stays out here on the corner if anybody's going to any of the corner retail here. The parking structure, this parking field in front of Best Buy and Marshall's and Ross, in this 1,700 stall parking structure right here doesn't change. Any of the residential that gets built, I speak for Northwoods here or here, will park just like the existing residential parks right here. These people who are residents here pull in here and park in their building. Same thing would occur out here.
Okay, next question.
Okay, this is back to traffic. To pile on the guy who was asking if you studied if it went out to the interstates,
I'm concerned just 2 blocks outside of the square that you evaluated. And so when you look at Easter Avenue and Race, as I understood your study, the high point traffic there, trips each way, was between 100 and 125 per day. That's 1,300 homes in our neighborhood. I don't know how many townhomes there are between the streets of SouthGlenn and Arapahoe High School. I gotta think that it's going to at least double. And you're saying 10% increase, I think, on Arapahoe and University. That traffic's going somewhere, and where it's gonna go is on Easter, right by our elementary school, Easter, right by Sandburg Elementary School, right by the country club, getting to Clarkson so that people can get that throughway to Arapahoe and Dry Creek. People are gonna find a way around. And I don't think changing 2 light signals is going to stop people from finding their way into our neighborhood. And I don't believe it's going to be 10% or 10 cars. Okay, was there a question? Yes. What's the real answer? Because I don't buy it. Help me understand. Okay, so I'm going to have Paul try one more time, and then we moved into comment with that one, but we'll go there and we'll let y'all talk about that in a second. But Paul, how is that possible that that's the number? Anything else on that?
How are you going to address the back neighborhood? How are you going to address that stuff?
So I'm gonna have you step up. She asked about the study itself. So what about the back neighborhood streets, Paul?
The local street traffic is going to be, per the forecasts that we have, relatively minor, as I said on the slide. 10 vehicles.
All right, Paul, I'm gonna let you off the hook. So I'm going to finish the questions, and then we're going to get to comments, because I'm pretty sure a lot of you are going to get up. I haven't moved on yet. I know many of you are going to want to get up in the comment session and say many things about don't believe the traffic study. So hang on to that. Let me finish the questions, and then we'll get to comments.
Okay, thanks. Okay, back in 2009, I thought the scuttlebutt was that you could buy those residences. Because I went in and tried to buy one, and they chased me off, and they said, no, economics had changed, that is going to convert everything to apartments. Why does this thing have to look like Aurora with all these apartments?
Why so many residences? Why so many residences?
I don't think it looks like Aurora at all. Thank you.
Okay. All right, next question.
Good evening. I have 2 questions. Did the traffic study involve school buses and the impact on school buses and transportation? Did the traffic study cover bicyclists that are using the current bike lane on Easter? Did it include school students that walk alone to and from school, that bike to and from school? Easter, I live on Easter and Gaylord, and I see those students. I see people in wheelchairs, buggies, babies. Was the traffic study including any pedestrian, bike, bus lines for students or otherwise?
School buses that are already on the roadway network were included in the traffic counts that were conducted for the study. So the school buses are already accounted for. In terms of bicycles and pedestrians along Easter, we did a specific analysis of Easter, and we did look at bicycle and pedestrian connectivity along Easter, and that is an appendix to the traffic study that's on the website.
Will there be a light placed there on Easter then in Gaylord, since people are already almost getting hit every day at that intersection on that crosswalk? Will there be a light included into that neighborhood to allow traffic in and out?
Right now, that is not proposed.
Next question, has there been an environmental study on light pollution, noise pollution, sound pollution?
Okay. So there is not on air pollution, that question was, but sound and light.
No, there hasn't.
Will there be?
It's not required by the city of Centennial.
Okay, so that will be your comment. Hold on. Question.
How do you work this first?
Just hold it right to your mouth.
Okay. I have a big question. I live 2 streets in back of Arapahoe High School. Warriors, game on. Okay, now, I do not appreciate putting in high-rise apartments, period. We are not going to be just doing 10 trips a day, I can tell you that, and I'm not even a mom. Kids get dropped off for tennis practice, baseball, football, whatever. In the meantime, the parents are going over to the mall to shop, get groceries, and so forth. That intersection by a Dry Creek and University is going to be bedlam. It already is, and we have seen crashes. In fact, there's a big load of glass right in the middle of University and Dry Creek. I passed it only yesterday. and the kids do not use crosswalk lights to add to the mix.
What's the question?
So why don't you do a study down at Dry Creek and University? Why?
Why not that far, Paul?
It's not required in the city scope.
Okay, that will be the next comment we get. Okay, back up here. A few more questions.
I have a question. I live right across the street on Easter, where Sears is. And there's Gaylord, which is actually private property. And I bet you all these places going to use our private property that we are required to maintain and have to pay it out of our HOA dues. Is the city chipping in for all these people that's going to be using our driveway? And also, I live right by the light that is Easter, and there is a driveway, and that driveway is very short to the light. And there are several buildings that have only that way in and out. Has anybody thought about the residents at Glen Oaks Commons or Glen Oaks condominiums?
Thought about the Glen Oaks residents? Eastern University? Answer?
Yeah, and we've met with several folks from there during our community engagement piece, and the intersection that you spoke of, Gaylord and Easter, was part of the traffic study.
Okay.
Okay, if I can get out of my driveway in the morning because it's very short, and sometimes it's really, you have that light and everybody is going to try to make a left or a right. If I can't get to the light because all of these people leaving at the same time, how am I going to get to work then? Because it's so close to the light on Easter and University.
Okay.
And
Next.
I'm sure you didn't have it included in your study.
Next question.
Would you provide the average rent for both in the blue area and the green area, or the different types of apartments? How much are you going to charge per rent to the people who live there? Put out on a spreadsheet that says 2 bedroom, 2 bath. This is approximately how much we are going to charge or rent for everybody on the blue, everybody on the green. And my comment is, you guys have really shot yourself on the foot by decreasing the retail space and drastically increasing the housing area. I mean, I am not in the construction business, but it really doesn't make any sense to me that you guys are asking these people to drastically decrease their retail space, 155,000, I think, square feet, and increase drastically the people, the apartment area.
Okay,
So I think there's two questions. First question is, what are we charging in rents? And so we are very early on in this process. We don't have those rates yet. I would compare them to what's being charged currently at Portola, but I can follow up with you after.
When you publish it.
You want us to publish them? Okay. The second question, hold on, Jody. What was the second question? It was about why are we going from retail to housing? As I said earlier,
you don't have to have 100,000 square feet. Okay? Nobody, if you said you're right, nobody's going to rent 100,000 square feet.
the streets of SouthGlenn, everything that's in the purple that you see, there's multiple vacant spaces. Don's team is trying to lease that, and we're having trouble doing it. It's not a factor of we don't want to. These are the market conditions, and we're trying to adapt to that.
Well, it looks like the market condition is much profitable right now for housing than it is for retail space. But you're trying to get customers that will buy 100,000 square feet of retail space.
Well,
and that is impractical right now. Only large companies like Macy's could afford something like that. So I'm done.
Understand. Thank you for your comment.
Okay, so I'm going to let her double dip because I didn't give her two questions.
So are you planning for sure that these residences will be rental and not condo? And why won't they be condo?
So we've talked about that a lot. It's a great comment, and it's something that we heard a lot during our feedback. Typically, our company doesn't build condos because it's just not. We're not set up. That structure isn't set up. Having said that, though, even though we typically own our buildings for a long period of time, I think we've had some buildings we've owned for 10 years, in the event that we were to sell it, it would be able to be converted to condos. And also, we design these buildings typically to be easily confused whether it's an apartment or a condo. We build them to condo standards. We make sure that they're very nice so that they often get confused.
Yeah, but it's also about like the ownership of it and having that buy into the community as opposed to just renting for a year. And
I
also,
agree.
what are the incentives for, I assume it's Alberta, to keep good retail here? Because there's been a number of really good restaurants and shops that have left, and what we're hearing is the rent goes up. And maybe you could rent it if you didn't charge so much money. So what is the thought about keeping people here?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that, because whatever's been put out in the market through Nextdoor or whatever other social media channels are being used is completely false, 100% false. And I'll give you, and it begs being answered here, specific response to Hodson's. Hodson's did not pay their rent $1 for 4 months. We let them stay in that space for 4 months, trying to accommodate them. We've been talking to them for months and months and months, to the point where we made them a percentage rent only deal. Stay and we'll just take a percentage, but you can't pay zero. So for some reason, somebody decided to put something out there. Nobody contacted me. Nobody contacted anybody at my company and said, hey, what happened at Hodson's? Well, Cantina was a long time ago, but just in general. And then in a broader context, every square feet that you own as an owner of a building, right, of whether it's an office building or a retail building, if it's not leased, you're losing money, right? We lose money on that. We have to pay the common area share of that. We have every motivation, and we have tenants in this project that are on percentage rent. We have tenants that are paying $15 a foot. We have tenants that are paying $20 a foot. We have tenants that are paying $40 a foot. We have tenants paying a wide range. It's not like we said every space in this project needs to be leased at $50 or you can leave. That's never been said. It's never been communicated. We've had static vacancy. We made a decision that, in hindsight, we built probably 75 to 100,000 square feet too much, right? And for 10 years, we haven't leased that space. So think about investing millions of dollars and getting no return on that. That's not our motivation at all. Our motivation is to get tenants in there and to make new deals, and you've seen new tenants that have been done recently as well.
Okay, super quick, because I want a few more questions before I just let you go and comment.
And I don't really know tax law or anything, but when you have a loss, isn't that a write-off? So isn't that benefit you just the same whether you rent it or not?
Okay, next question.
No, it's not. It's not.
All right, next question. Keep in mind, what I wanted to do is have clarifying questions, which is a back and forth, and then to make sure that you all get as much comments on the piece of paper as possible, we're going to move to feedback, which is just going to be you. So final questions. Ooh.
What is your occupancy rate right now at Portello?
96% plus or minus.
Okay, and your new apartments that you're building, are they going to be, luxury apartments?
I think we're still evaluating, but they would be of the general same quality that exists there today, at least on our parcel.
Okay.
Same.
Next question.
All right, okay, thank you. Two questions, actually, both traffic, of course. One is, you in your study, you say you keep our LOS above a D with the new. Where are we at today?
Level of service?
Level of service today. So you keep us above a D. Where are we right now?
It varies depending on the intersections. Most are Bs and Cs. There are a few Ds out there existing. Okay. And then the two Fs that have already been pointed out.
Right. And then I guess the second question, and I think some folks have touched on this, like your evasion traffic as you go out. If this goes to a D, again, like everybody, if you're going along, university's backed up, I'm going to find another way around. And as the level of service goes down from a B and a C to a D, it's all that ripple effect is going to be outside. And I think you guys would be well served to go look at what you're going to do the rest of the neighborhood as people evade that. So we're a B or a C in some places right now, and we're going to a D. Is that correct?
Most places we're to B or a C, and we're staying in that B to C range. The details are in the traffic study. Okay. I don't have it in front of me.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Next question.
So, retired principal here, and it's my experience that there's a delay from the collection of property tax to the dissemination of Littleton Public Schools. And in the meantime, there's going to be increase in class size and temporary buildings put on sites to house the new kids that are there. And the teachers who are brought in to teach these kids aren't going to be able to afford to live here on teacher salaries. Have you thought of that?
First question, I know there's a question or a statement about additional students in the classrooms and buildings that'll be added to the elementary schools, which it's my understanding, and we've talked to Littleton Public Schools, and they've said that they can accommodate it, and Littleton Public Schools is open enrolling currently. They can speak more specifically to that. But what I do know is we have data of our own 10 years of ownership of 202 apartments, and at a peak year, the peak year in the last 10 years, we had 8 students. It was told to me we had 8 students, and in a low year we had 4. So we've got 10 years of data of 202 apartments that are simply not generating a lot of school-age children. And now if we have 1,000, there's going to be more. But we also have had a conversation with them. And when we originally developed the streets at SouthGlenn, we wrote a very significant check to Littleton Public Schools in anticipation, or their anticipation, of having additional students that didn't materialize, and we're going to continue to have those conversations with Littleton Public Schools.
Okay, next question.
2 questions. Number 1, if there's medians put on university, is that going to require an expansion of university, a widening of it?
No, it will go within where the existing left turn lanes are today.
Got it. Okay. And then in the community, just on the east side of university, we're already experiencing a lot of noise pollution. Our concern is, are any of the groups willing to put in sound barrier walls or fences along university so some of that sound pollution is mitigated from our community?
Okay. Developers, sound walls?
That one I don't know.
All right, there's some people in line for questions. My hope was, that was a question. My hope was, and I'm going to let him think about it for a second. So I'm going to keep going on the questions. What my hope was to sort of let the back and forth stop and let you just throw things on the pieces of paper so they're just hearing as much as possible. So I'm going to do a couple more questions, and then we're going to move to that feedback. Go ahead and ask the next question.
Wait, can we answer this question first?
John.
Yeah, we will and always have and will continue to follow the City of Centennial required standards.
Okay.
Thank you for being here. When you said there is a right turn out and a left turn and a right turn in over there by the Verizon store, I'm not too sure what you called that street.
Davies.
Now, what you have done with the building of the building on the east side of Sears, where you're building your apartments, you have taken away the entry there. Is that not correct? You're not going to have an entry off of Easter?
Easter and what?
Right, just between the Hallmark parcel
to make
and
sure
Sears.
I understand, the question is about this entrance here.
Yep, it's going away?
No, it's just getting shifted slightly. It's getting shifted to align with Gaylord on the south and then tie into the existing
So
street
is
there.
all of that parking then, and so that they can take a left on Easter, that's all parking, no building, up to where the right-hand turn is, correct?
So Keith, say again where the road is and where the parking will be.
Yeah, show me where the road end off of Easter is.
Okay. So the road currently, basically, it will shift and will move and align. Oh, I'm not sure what.
Go back.
Right, sorry. So the plan is for the road to shift and align. It will, currently right now, Vine aligns across and Gaylord is offset. We're proposing to offset Vine to align with this street and shift Gaylord to align across Easter.
And it's going to meet up with the pond or what? How are you going to get back to Verizon store? How do I get there?
So you're getting over here?
Yep.
So
coming in off
once
of
again,
East.
you'll come here. We'll also, our plan right now also connects a road across here. Connects Davies through.
How
where
wide are
Sears sits
those
now.
streets?
Say that, sorry.
How wide are those streets?
We're still working on the exact street dimensions.
The dimensions have to be so wide according to how the fire department gets in there. You have to leave 11.5 feet for fire department to go both ways. And so that, are you going to leave walking for people? You keep saying it's a walking area. Are you going to leave a lot of walking space on either side?
Yes, our plan is to meet the requirements we need for any fire access and also to provide sidewalks for pedestrian connectivity.
Okay, parking was brought up. This is my aunt. You're going to rent. You rent to Joe. Joe has 2 friends. He rented a 2-bedroom. Joe has a car. His friend who comes in has a car. The other girlfriend living with him has a car. Now, tell me, they will be nice and maybe let the lady have her car below, but where is that 3rd car going to be parked? Because right now in your apartment and condo complexes, they are parking in the parking lot where the shoppers park. And so a lot of people live there and they have 3 cars, not 2. Thank you for being here, but think about that one.
And
Okay.
to answer the question about where guests will park, not sure about the existing Portola, but our projects, typically we do have some area set aside for guest parking so that guests have a place to come in.
I'm okay continuing the questions and answers. It just means less of you chat, but I'm fine if you all are fine with that. So keep trucking.
Tough crowd, huh? All right, so I've been a firm proponent of the rule that one of my longstanding rules is that the perks of being a pessimist are that you are either right or you are pleasantly surprised. Whenever I see, things getting built up here, and we're not accounting for the mysterious girlfriend's car, we're not accounting for the cars that are parked up on Race Street here, in the morning. It's narrow enough going down there. I commute down Race to go onto Arapahoe in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning because I'll never get out at any other time. When you start adding more people to the mix with those extra cars, my pessimistic side says it's going to get a lot tighter. So we're also talking about resources, water pressure. The other pessimistic part of me says we're going from B's and C's down to D's. When there are wrecks, because there will be more, it will absolutely get pushed off to those other streets. A lot more than it already does, and there are so many crazy people going zooming down those streets. The pessimistic side of me says, can we at least get a bit more of a robust traffic study done in other areas?
Okay, so the suggestion, we moved a little bit to commenting, so the suggestion is do a more robust traffic study. Can we do a more robust traffic? Okay.
Sorry, thank you for being here today. I actually was looking for a little more clarification regarding the actual ratio of parking spaces to units for the buildings, girlfriend or not. The ratio of actual parking spaces to units. Is it like one unit it gets one parking space?
So in terms of the residential requirements, it's one parking space per bedroom. So if it's a 1-bedroom, it's 1 space, 2-bedroom, 2. And that's what's required. That's what's required.
Okay, and these units, you're providing adequate space for this, plus extra for visitors and so forth that is intended inside in the plan?
Will you answer the question for the recording?
Yes, that's correct.
And actually, I had one other question regarding, have you guys done studies regarding the impact on property taxes from what this will generate and how it will affect the neighborhood? And my question is regarding senior citizens, older people who are already finding it expensive in the neighborhood, and you're talking about firefighters and teachers and everyone else in a neighborhood where the property values are already going up quite a bit, and the potential impact for pushing out people who we really need in the neighborhood and how that will affect them. Have there been studies on any of that?
So this was some feedback that we've heard from a lot of different people. I didn't mention it earlier. I've looked at some studies and haven't really come to a conclusion. I know that's not the answer that you want to hear, but it's a very interesting question, and I think a lot of people have tried to study it, and it's come up inconclusive. I mean, we can continue to look at that, but that's our experience to date.
Okay. Thank you.
This is for the traffic engineer. Regarding these apartments, how many vehicles per unit did you do in this study?
His question is, how many cars per unit did the traffic analysis look at? Yes? Yes. And where did you get the criteria?
The criteria come from the nationally accepted Institute of Transportation Engineers manual that we used for the study, which is required for use by the city. And it works out to slightly less than one peak period trip per unit in the morning and one in the evening. And the dailies work out between 8 and 10 trips per day per unit.
But the vehicles themselves, I mean, is it two cars per unit or one? Boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case may be.
Well, in terms of, I'm speaking in terms of trips, how many people come and go. In terms of the actual number of vehicles, that goes back to the parking that was discussed earlier.
So, no.
You said you assume one trip per...
The answer is that when they do their study, it's not calculated based off of number of cars per unit. It's based off of number of trips per unit.
But okay, and is this the state, the study? I mean, the agency that you used for the state of Colorado? Are they the same ones that did C-470 and missed it by 20 years? Sorry.
No, that's great. Thanks. Sorry. I'm gonna leave that as a comment. Go ahead.
All right, I had two questions. Based on one of them, I now have just a single question, one comment. First question, if you're looking to change rules of the development plan, I understand that if the markets change, you guys have a right to make money with your investment. What was your rate of return in 2009 roughly that you signed up to with the existing rules compared to what's the rate of return you're looking to get with the 1,200 new apartments? Are you upping your rate of return while you're looking to change the rules, or are you just trying to get back to that same point?
Do you want to? I can answer for Northwood. I'll let you want to answer for Alberta, because we haven't known this.
Fair, yeah.
Sure. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what our initial return expectations were in 2009 versus what they are today. All I know is that in 09, 10, 11, 12, we weren't anywhere near achieving our pro forma returns. And today we look at it much differently. It's public record. We purchased the Macy's building for $10 million. We've owned it for a year and a half, maybe a little longer now. And we expect to make a return on that $10 million, and that's a different return analysis than the balance of the project.
Right, but where would you break even in 09 terms when you signed up for the existing rules? What number of units? Is it 800? Is it 1,000? Is it 4,000?
Oh, and the number of residential units?
Yeah.
We had 350 residential units in 09, and that's, we didn't look at it as a break even. We never look at anything like a break even.
No, I know, but what I'm getting at is you guys are asking the rules to change the city. The market's changed. That's fair. I understand that. But I would hope that you're not getting a larger rate of return on this land that you originally purchased with the existing rules. And I'm curious if you understood today or have considered today to get back to that same point that you were willing to make the deal 12 years ago or 10 years ago. What number of residencies do you need today to get to that?
We've never analyzed it in that fashion. I don't know if these...
I think that's important for the city to understand when they give you guys a yay or nay to the answer.
Sure,
Next one's a comment. With the number of units that you guys have, you said you had 8 people, or 8 students. You're going to multiply that by 6. We got another 50 students that are going to feed to Twain. I have 3 boys. My middle boy is in kindergarten right now. He has 30 kids in his class, as does the opposing kindergarten class. they don't have a lot of room right now. There's no physical space to add additional classrooms. So even though 8 students with the 200 units you have today doesn't sound like a lot, trying to feed 50 more into Twain would be a huge impact that, again, I think the city needs to assess.
Yeah, that's a good comment. It wasn't a question, but we will definitely look into that.
Okay. I'm going to stay, before y'all yell at me, I'm going to stay here for two people because Kathy's double dipping and this line was longer. So I'm going to try to go 2 on this side.
Don, I have a question about the occupancy of the retail space. What's your perception of why there's so much vacancy in the streets of SouthGlenn as opposed to the Southlands or Aspen Grove or some of those that seem to be much better occupied?
I think some of that has to do with the configuration of the blocks and not having, if you look at Aspen Grove, there's a sea of parking out in front of the retail, and a lot of retailers like that. Aspen Grove's also made a lot of percentage rent deals there as well, so their economics aren't as good. And Southlands, these guys own Southlands and sold it, has a lot of vacancy as well, and we originally built that, and it has a lot. The vacancy that occurs in Southlands is on the internal streets, the town center piece, again, because of people in the suburbs are used to parking right in front of their store and walking in. So I would say that would be one explanation. If we had an answer, I'd fix it, but I don't have the answer.
I appreciate that. Then I'm going to pile on the traffic. Some of the issue with traffic is outside of Centennial. When Highlands Ranch was a ranch with horses and cows, there were 4 ways north. I-25, University Broadway, and Santa Fe. There are now still only 4 ways north. And I go through the University and Bellevue intersection every morning, and it's not unusual to sit through 4 to 7 traffic light changes. Other comment, because I know you can't solve that one, but consider it, because some of the cities north of us have said you can't go through here. And just your 75-foot raise takes my sunset away.
Thank you. Okay, one more on this side because this line was longer, and then we'll go back that way.
Good evening. How many total bedrooms are proposed here? I know you're talking, I came in late, I've heard 1,000, I've heard 1,200 units. How many total bedrooms?
I don't know that we certainly haven't done our unit mix analysis, but if you just took, half of your units were 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and half were 1-bedroom, 1-bath, as just a general rule of thumb, you'll have some 3-bedrooms and you may have some studios, which is considered a bedroom. So I'd say, 1,500, 1,700, something like that.
Okay, and so you're going
bedrooms.
So you're going to have 1,500 to 1,700 parking spaces inside of these wraparound parking garages?
Yes.
Because my experience with millennials and the young people growing up today, in order to afford rent in these places, you end up with sometimes 4 to 6 people living in, a 2 or 3 bedroom place. And I just don't think you guys have taken into account the amount of cars that are going to be there. And I have a question for all of you. How many of you live around here and travel Arapahoe Road or Dry Creek in the morning from SouthGlenn out to I-25?
Two questions there. One was, I think the 4 or 5 people living in a, have you accounted for or thought about 4 or 5 people living in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment? We, and I would imagine these guys do as well, have prohibitions in our lease. It's a lease violation, and that gets patrolled pretty aggressively by us. We've only had a few instances so far in our 10 years where we found more than the allowed residents living in the unit. And they also need key fobs, right? So they need a key fob to access. So it's pretty, unless somebody wants to go keep giving their key fob out to somebody else, we keep close control of our key fobs. So it's a good question, and I think everybody in the apartment world is very aware of that and tries to manage that and we have prohibitions against also Airbnb and things like that. The second question, do I live around here? Yes, I live right around University in Bellevue, and I have to deal with that same traffic just like everybody else does.
But when you start throwing all these cars in the mix, trying to get out to I-25 on Arapahoe Road, it's an absolute nightmare. And the one thing that Centennial had no control over was the development of the Marathon property, and that still isn't done. So we still have all those units and everything. They're adding all the cars into the mix here, and now you're wanting to throw another 1,500 to 1,700 cars every morning into the rush hour traffic around here. I just don't see it.
Just one more comment about the parking too. I just want you to understand that it wouldn't be in our best interest to not provide enough parking for all the residents, right? We are attempting to meet the market so that if someone really does have a car and they come to us and we say we don't have a parking spot, chances are they're not going to rent for us, and that's not what we want. So it's in our best interest to provide enough parking spots to accommodate everyone.
Okay, next question.
I just want to.
They're going to end up in the regular parking if they don't have a key fob, which is what.
So there's definitely there's many concerns you guys have heard many times. The concern about is the traffic analysis correct? It's going to be more than you think, and there's going to be a parking problem. So okay, next comment or question. If you haven't noticed, we've moved on to either. So next comment or question.
I apologize for not knowing all the state laws. If anybody saw the Constitution, good luck. So, you said to me that the state of Colorado does not require you to do a traffic study at Dry Creek and University.
No, the city doesn't.
The city, all right. Why can't we have a traffic study done over there? Because that really does jam up at all hours of the day. But you are the investors to our community, to our city.
So
let's be ethical and do something to help our citizens out all over. I am in District 1. Thank you.
I appreciate the comment, and that's why we're here today to listen. So thank you.
There will be a meeting summary from me when this is done, and one of the things on it will be a suggestion that you do go that far. Now, whether they do or not, but it will be on there.
Hi, I have a question about water. Not just water pressure, but water resources. I would think that with all those residential places coming into being, that they will use much more water than Sears or Macy do right now. Where's that water? What is the water source here? Is it Denver water, or is it a private source? And who's paying for all that? Are our water rates going to go up? That's my question.
So we've checked with the local utilities, and it was one of our points on here, and we've talked to them diligently and confirmed that they can accept this increase.
How many years?
I don't.
For how many years?
I don't know if I don't have that data for you right now. I can get it for you though if you'd like. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Good. Okay. Next question.
I actually have a comment. Ooh, I guess I have a booming voice. Excuse me. My name's John Humoller. I grew up in Homestead Farms. I played basketball at the school. I went to Newton, so I kind of have hard feelings about Powell. And I love this community. And excuse me. I remember when SouthGlenn started going under, when they built Park Meadows. I remember I was just a boy, so I remember when KB Toys shut down. Specifically, it was a devastating day. But here listening to this, I have an extremely popular opinion, and that is that I support the heck out of this project. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that. So we have a group standing in front of us that's willing to invest millions of dollars and take extreme risk on behalf of the community, right? It's going... Yeah.
So the thing I want to say is this is an opportunity to show the kind of community you want to be, which is respecting differences of opinion. So we'll get there, and then you can say.
Thank you very much. So they want to build 1,700 units. The dynamics of Denver have changed dramatically. I read while I was browsing through Facebook the other day that the city of Denver and the Denver Metro has added the equivalent of another Denver Metro in population, which is insane. Housing prices, I'm also part of the millennial generation, are outrageous, and apartment rents are skyrocketing. So In my estimation, being a Colorado State economics major, is it's a question of supply and demand. So increased supply in apartment units hopefully will lower prices. So I'm good. I know one guy up here named Brian Cleary. When I found out he was working on this, I invited him out to lunch and I gave him all my feedback and just blah, 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 and he listened to every bit of it. So what I would encourage this group to do is take Don up on his offer to go have a cup of coffee and talk about what you want to see here. And I can speak for Brian Cleary that he's a man who will do what he says he's going to do. I know Northwood, I know Alberta, and they're both quality companies. So give it a chance. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next comment. Next comment or question?
Okay, I have a couple of really quick questions. Do I understand correctly that with your development, you're going to be requiring a zoning change or modification?
Correct.
Okay. Will that just apply to SouthGlenn area, or will that apply up and down University?
It's only in the SouthGlenn area, and it's mainly in the green and the blue areas that you see up there. Like Don said, it's a little bit more than that, but it's not any of the red, and it's not most of the purple.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next comment, question.
To John, who just made his comment, John, there's a group called Neighbors for Streets at SouthGlenn that's done just that for the last 6-8 months. And I want to thank Kyle for coming out, and Don and Brian. We've met a number of times, had a lot of conversations. Appreciate your willingness to collaborate and educate and work together. That was unique. Not everybody in this project or affiliated with the city decided to do that, so thank you. Appreciate that. And I want to go to a slide, and I'll have a question for Kyle in just a minute. It's the slide with the representation along Easter. If you could go, the rendering, yeah, if you could go to that. But to Paul and to the developers, I've done some of my own research with traffic impact studies. And from what I understand, there's a portion of that that is based on assumptions. I mean, there's not always data, right? So there's assumptions. So I'm skeptical at nature, so I went out and did my own study, and I stood on the corner of Arapahoe and University, and I did count in 15-minute increments, and I came up with 15 to 20% higher count to those 15-minute increments on 3 different days. So my question is, would you consider doing another traffic study? That's question 1. And then question 2 to Kyle, I'll let someone answer that first. Would you consider doing another traffic study? Because the counts that I counted were, again, 15, 20% higher.
Yeah, so is do another traffic study to verify the counts, like take the counts on December 15th, 16th, 17th, or some other days?
Some other days, yes.
Sure, we'd consider that.
Thank you. My other question to Kyle, that's it. And again, Kyle, you made multiple trips out. Appreciate it. Family situation, I won't reveal, but thank you for doing what you did. So with all due respect, there isn't any way that this is attractive, and I think many would find it in the neighborhood, especially across the street, offensive, because the height here, while this may work hand in hand with what's at the streets at SouthGlenn, it does not work hand in hand with the neighborhood. So I realize your focus is on the development, matching up with that, but my concern and my question is, how does this match up with the neighborhood and the feel for the neighborhood, and especially some of the things that are codified by the city of working with the community in the neighborhood in the way of its feel?
How did you think about this?
Yeah, so thank you for the comment and question, Ron. So, one thing we really did when we looked at this was, we've talked about many times, is looking at the scale of things, and I understand, that this is higher than what's there today, so sorry. One thing we did look at that I talked about earlier was really trying to work with the topography, to minimize that impact. So if you look at this here, you're effectively from the street level seeing 4 levels. And then the other thing that we've looked at and continue to study is understanding the setback requirements, but then also what can we do in those setbacks requirement with landscaping and that sort of thing in order to help buffer the streets of SouthGlenn to the adjacent neighborhoods.
So some of you may have noticed we're past 8, so we were about 17 minutes late, so we're going to go about 17 minutes late.
Hello. I do appreciate the situation that you're in. Do I have
Close,
to?
just close.
Just close. Woo. With empty real estate space and losing money with that. And my perspective is quality of life. Living in this neighborhood, the post office across the street is always crowded. The rec center is pretty busy. People have brought up the traffic and the air pollution and all those things. So the 1,000 plus units just seems huge. I guess my question is that the original master development plan there were additional, I believe, 148 units still permitted. And, what were the parameters that was decided on? Maybe this is a city question. What did they look at that they determined it needs to be stopped at 148? Now this huge leap to 1,000 is just drastic. And there was a process then, there was input then, so what limited it to that 148? That's my question.
I think the primary answer to your question is in 2006, 2007, when we started the planning exercise on this, we knew we couldn't acquire either the Sears or the Macy's parcel, so we couldn't plan anything on either of those parcels. And in fact, we had to get their approval under an REA agreement to do anything. So we had to get Macy's and Sears approval. So when we looked at kind of the center core of where Dillard's and JCPenney were and what we could do there, that felt like the right number for there. We couldn't go and get residential units approved on parcels of land we didn't own, so that was the primary reason.
Okay, next question, comment.
My comment has mostly to do with the community's ability to use the space, the common space that you've provided. So right now, Streets of SouthGlenn is awesome. There's so many awesome things going there. And just for an example, my girlfriend loves to bring her 2-year-old son to everything that goes on down there. And right now, as it is, in the summer concert, she has to arrive an hour early just to get a semi-decent spot for this. So if you're going to bring in another couple thousand people, it's sort of going to make the Streets of SouthGlenn feel like, especially with this rendering up there with all those buildings on there, it's going to make the Streets of SouthGlenn feel like a walled garden. It's going to make it feel so that those who live there, that space is for them because they can go downstairs in 2 minutes and they can be waiting an hour and a half just in their community. They have that time, they have that opportunity. But I live in the Knowles townhomes, and I still want to take part in everything there, and I don't want to have to fight through 4,000 people just to go see a summer concert series.
Thanks for your comment. Okay, next comment or question.
Hello again. I have one question. I don't know. Is it working? In the buildings you're acquiring, is there asbestos, as there was in the rest of the mall? Asbestos, and what is the mitigation process? How long? I have a comment.
Is there asbestos in the existing buildings?
We have done our study on I don't know if there's any in the Sears building, but there isn't in the Macy's building.
Okay. And my comment, could you go to the next 2 slides, please? So this is the view from my home right now. I see the night sky. The lights are turned off at night. Do we go to the next view? That will be my view from my front yard. The light pollution in and of itself literally made me cry when you guys showed me that screen. I really would like you to consider the impact of my neighbors. We all live in, there's at least 300 units that face that. You're going to directly impact our quality of life with the light pollution, the noise pollution, and it literally makes me sick and sad. And I understand that you guys have to make money, and I appreciate that you guys are in a difficult position, but for those of us that own and live here, it's not attractive. It's atrocious. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next comment, question.
I too want to echo what Ron Phelps said, that the group of the neighbors at Streets of SouthGlenn, you guys have come down by 50% of the units you were proposing, so thank you so much for all your hard efforts of listening to us. And while I still think it's a few too many units, I would rather have a few units than a dilapidated Sears building. But I do think the 1,700 or the 1,200 is still too high. I would like to see the height reduced along Easter Avenue, perhaps a stair-step approach where you could blend from the neighborhood and the height that the neighborhood is to raise up in a stair-step fashion to the heights of the largest existing buildings in the middle. I agree with the person before me about the common areas not being, that with this increased population, I mean, it's very difficult for the common areas to hold the people that are currently trying to go, and especially with the streets too narrow. And when you do put Vine as a through street, I'm not sure that you can widen it at all, but that's part of the problem of navigating through the streets of SouthGlenn. But my last point is to the traffic study. Arapahoe and Vine, I agree with you, that's a definite problem spot. I use that intersection a lot. And I know your proposal was to create protected, the northbound goes, the southbound goes. The biggest thing I see at that intersection is that you almost need a designated, especially going northbound, a designated left turn lane. Because a lot of people want to go straight, and part of the congestion is, with the way it is the left turn that's not protected, and the straight are the same lane, and there's only a right turn lane. So take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, thank you for your patience. Okay, go.
All right, the last thing, when you talked about the traffic study, I heard you say that it incorporated one trip in the morning and one trip in the evening per unit in the building? Is that correct?
That's approximate. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head.
But yeah, even if it's approximate, I need you guys to realize that if you are renting to people that don't have kids, then you're talking about young urban professionals, the old yuppie. They are not one-income homes. They are two-income homes, and they're not making one trip. They're making two trips every morning and every evening, right? Because the people that are renting these are a different category than the people that are renting in Parker, where they're raising their kids or whatever. This is a certain element of society that is, each of them has a car, each of them is going to work, each of them is coming home each day, which drastically changes those numbers if it was based on one trip per unit.
Sure, good point.
Thank you.
We, right now, just a data point, the last data I saw, the last 3 or 4 years, we had over 50% of our renters were over the age of 50, and a lot of were single income households, and there are some 25-year-olds as well. So we'll revisit that and look at the mix, and the data comes from this aggregation of a lot of data, and we'll look at what our mix is. Thank you.
Okay, next comment, question.
Thanks, guys, for being here. I can't imagine you guys being up there. I do not want to be you right now. But my question is more for the traffic guy. Of course, he's taking a lot of flack. What was your ADT numbers for university? I'm real curious on that one there. I know you.
If I remember off the top of my...
Can you say what ADT is for the rest of us?
The question was, what was the ADT, which stands for average daily traffic, and that's a common traffic engineering measure of all of the traffic on the road over the course of the entire day. And the ADT on university, if I remember off the top of my head, was in the 30 to 35,000 vehicles per day range.
Okay, that's exactly what I was looking for, because I saw those same numbers too. Also, a second question for the city is there any upgrades or anything to existing sewer systems that's going to be required? Because the thing is there's going to be a lot of toilets flushed, baths taken, everything. And what I'm looking at is, okay, I've been in government too, and government is not proactive, they're reactive. So later on down the road, 5-10 years, we're going to find out that these systems aren't exactly up to par, and then who's going to be on the hook for them, in the form of like a special tax or anything coming back to the residents that we're going to be paying for after Alberta's left.
Okay, so I can address this a little bit. And just to be clear, the City of Centennial, as a local municipal government, does not provide your water and sewer service. It is provided by a separate government agency. Just as the developer stated, they've had conversations with, I believe it is the South Arapahoe Sanitation District, and then I want to say it's called the South Inglewood Water District, and that's the one that provides water and sewer. We've had conversations with them also, and as a part of any future approval, before they even build one additional unit, they'll be required to do an extensive study of what the demand for water and sewer services will be and what the existing system is able to handle. The same thing was done initially when the development was redeveloped, and in the event the sanitation and the water district say there is no way the system could accommodate any more users, then they don't build. They don't get the authority to build. One of the city's requirements is you have to provide what we call kind of level of service or proof of service by that utility. So as a part of when they're actually ready to submit building plans, not just the zoning, but building plans, in addition to some preliminary items at the zoning level, at the level that would be addressed in early 2020, they will need to provide proof that they either, one, have done that study, or two, it is very, very, very clear for all involved that if they are not able to accommodate additional users, no building permits are issued.
Okay, so I'm going to give y'all 5 more minutes, and I know there's more people than we can get through, but I want to at least let you know there's comment cards. You can put a question on it. You can also email folks. So I just want to give you that. This is also not the final public comment moment. There will be a full submittal and full public hearings for that, but I just want to get we're going to do 5 more minutes.
I have just a couple of comments. First off, there are 5 schools that are going to be impacted by this primarily. I don't buy the number that you're giving for numbers of students, sir. You guys have all been sitting up here very smugly acting like this is a done deal, and there's no way. You look at this, we're going to put 1,000 people in here. There were probably 450 people in this room earlier, and that's probably 3% of what you would find that are really interested in this project. And I would guess 80% of the people in this room right now are against this project, if not more. You guys aren't wanted. This is not wanted. Do you want to live in a neighborhood? Do you want to build in a neighborhood and build a project that nobody here wants around the neighborhood? Is that your intent, sir? Because when you have have retail opportunities such as Super Target that could go in there where it is now and keep it the way it was, the master plan that we bought in this neighborhood so that we wanted to be around, you have an opportunity to do that. And that's my comment for tonight.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Don't go there. Okay. Next comment.
I want to thank you for being here. I've lived in this community for 60 years. I was 22 years old. Yes, ma'am. I've watched this community grow from basically nothing, District 1, District 2. I've been a resident, like I said, for nearly 60 years. And I've watched it develop under county, without a city, and we brought it and had to bring in all the special districts. So the city really doesn't have to manage anything there except try to coordinate those special districts. I suspect that every one of those special districts, fire, library, police, sewer, water, drainage, all of those are going to be coming along here in a few years and saying, we're short of capacity, or our system's worn out because of addition. Also, we're not too happy to pass any of those proposals. Most of them fail at the voting booth, and the improvements aren't made. And that can lead to a deterioration of the community. Now, that's a comment. Now I have a question. On the Easter, would you please go back to the rendering of Easter? You've done a nice job there of showing us what that is to appear. And it's attractive. It doesn't look like East Germany. The trees are shading the driveway. Over here on the left, you can see the shade. I guess you didn't do the rendering with the morning sun, which would shade that entire street. That brings up my next comment. Would you please go to the display of the different colors with a layout that will Whoa, you had it. Why didn't you, or maybe you did, consider leaving the Davie Street open for it? Well, I'm going to make a comment here first. All of the codes were followed for everything that's been built around SouthGlenn, prior to SouthGlenn being SouthGlenn Mall, and especially prior to the streets of SouthGlenn. And the existing streets that you are using, you're using what's existing. You're plopping down 1,300 units without giving up any land to accommodate the 2,000-3,000 people that you're adding. You want to use the streets that were designed for us and those 350 units that were approved 10, 12 years ago. I suggest that you take another look and move those units back to the north and build another street in there that serves the residents of the new residents of the proposed SouthGlenn.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do some speed commenting, okay? Because I want to make it through the rest of you without taking as much time. So I'm going to give you each 1 minute, and we're going to truck on. Is that okay? So I'm going to start down this line. I'm going to do 1, 1, 1, and keep to 1 minute. That's the way we can keep us, make sure that you can comment and try to keep us on time. So 1 minute, go.
I'm going to quote, since they couldn't remember the numbers, I'm going to quote from the Centennial Citizen 2011. Streets at SouthGlenn opened in 2009 to replace the former SouthGlenn Mall. I'm going to skip. $310 million project. There were bonds for $77 million, special revenue bonds to fund the reconstruction, with the city agreed to pay back. What that means is we financed the project. The taxpayers got to finance these guys, so we get screwed again, quite frankly. Hold on, I'm not done.
Wait, yep. Your minute's almost up.
And you didn't finish on time either.
Well, we're now over our 17 minutes.
So we
this
look,
is a public
we paid $77 million in taxpayer dollars in 2008. We got screwed then. We're going to get screwed again. And we need to go to the council meeting, folks. There's no council members here, so this really doesn't hardly matter at all.
Thank you.
Is this LEED green development?
LEED? Is it LEED, architecturally LEED?
Are you gathering water on the roofs? Are you putting green roofs on? What are you doing to make this lower impact?
Yeah, so I can speak to that for our piece, and maybe Don can touch on theirs, but we do certify all of our projects with a green certification, whether that's LEED, Green Globe certification, and we do that through a mix of strategies, whether that's stormwater collection on the roof, low flow fixtures, et cetera.
Okay. What about your energy use?
Same thing, that's always part of our green analysis program.
An interesting fact up here, we have all white men representing this project. Do you have any people of color or women?
Okay. Thank you. Okay, again, we're on 1 minute. Go.
Okay, I love that there's those wonderful trees that were saved from the original project in that green common area. The question I have is, you're adding another couple thousand people, and you mentioned earlier you get about 5,000 people for some Halloween event. Where in a common area can you address that many people? You said there's about a 10% the city requires you to provide some sort of an open space. I know in developments out in the suburbs, they require you to have specific trails and pocket parks and things like that for the residents to help attract those of us who live around here and use the park or the shopping area. Had you considered making a little bit more open space so that people who walk their dogs, where are the dogs going to poop? Where are they going to pick it up? Are you going to have some green space, just maybe some grassy areas? Because that little common area is going to get just trampled with a lot of people.
Okay,
that's it.
Great. Next comment, and then we're done.
Okay, can you go back to the rendition of the pretty pictures?
The pretty pictures.
The other one too. The other one maybe. Just curious. How many stories are you depicting here?
So this is 5 stories total.
Oh, okay.
four or above grade, because that's what I was talking about with the
Okay,
topography.
yeah, because you said you were going to build 5 to 6 stories, and that's not 6.
So he said that's 4 above and 1 halfway, Keith?
Okay, so this doesn't show how tall they really would be.
So let me caveat that. So this does show fairly close to what is allowable, 75 feet. There are different ways with different floor-to-floor heights that you can achieve 6 stories with a different floor-to-floor height in 75 feet. That's not part of our plan right now. But
Okay, next, so we're not adding any new people.
Okay, here's mine. I'm sorry, I'm ashamed we ever voted for the city of Centennial. You sold us down the river.
Thank you. Okay, so 1 minute each down. Go.
I keep hearing how you say you love our community, you want to support our community, but I haven't heard anything that will add value to my life or anybody else's life in my neighborhood, except for lots of traffic and lots of people. And I think there's too many people already. My sewer bill continues to climb every single year, and I can't afford it, quite frankly. I support my household myself. Also, we submitted a list, the group that's together, of what things we would like to see in that area and suggestions, and from my understanding, it was just overlooked. No comments, no appreciation, and no thought to what we're asking for.
Thank you.
Just a couple of follow-ups. So, first one is would it be a crime to just chop that top floor off? I mean, because that's, I mean, that would be okay to me. And then the next one, you stated that you would be okay to meet up for coffee. I was just going to see if you could post your contact info.
Okay, great. Next. And thank you for the speedy.
So this is also again about the height of the buildings. I don't know if you've ever been on Race Street. They built that new apartment that's 3 stories, which already feels very tall on the west side of the street, correct. So that's not even as tall as this. So I'm with him. Like, if you guys could limit this to like 2 or 3 stories, people might be more willing. I ask you, the city, to please not change the height requirements, especially around the periphery.
Great. Okay, last 3.
Thanks for being here. I have one comment for the city. Actually, I'll start. I'm really impressed that everybody thinks that they are going to be full, because I don't have that perception. I don't think that people are moving to a suburb without transit. I think transit has to be part of this picture for this to be successful. So city, please work with RTD to try to figure out whether it's bus or shuttle or something, because I don't see how this residential can work if there isn't easy access. Because why do young people want to live in the suburb? I just don't see that. Secondly, is there any way for you guys to put together a phase-in situation so that you're not going to do it all at once. You'd probably start in phases, and that might really help the community around get a feel for what you're going to do, and allow you some flexibility of, oh, if this isn't working as well as it could, maybe we can put phase 2 a little differently, but that might be helpful.
Great. Okay, last 2.
2 comments and a question. 75 feet is too high. The design, particularly on Easter, reflects an urbanized look in what is a low-density suburban area. SouthGlenn should remain low-density suburban look and feel. Second comment, I am dubious about the level of effort to remain retail. Conversations with commercial real estate professionals indicate they have entities looking for large retail space in this area. I had a specific conversation with the person trying to lease the Hobby Lobby space at County Line and Quebec, and they said that most of the people interested are desiring a larger space. And then the question, eliminate acres from a retail center negatively impacts smaller retail businesses. Where will this domino take streets at SouthGlenn 5 years from now? More apartment units?
Okay. Thank you. Final comment.
Okay, so I'm going to pile on the traffic study again, because I don't believe the fuzzy math here either, that 2,000 to 3,000 more people and cars are going to only result in 10% more traffic. That we're not not all rocket scientists here, but sorry about that. So 2,000 to 3,000 more people are only going to increase traffic 10%. Don't believe the numbers. So second comment would be, why don't you look in the area of Wadsworth and Southwest Plaza for similar density, because there they have 3 or 4 lanes of traffic, and we just don't have that ability to expand university like they did there.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to tell you what happens now. So I'm going to type up a meeting summary. It's not a transcript, it's a summary of the key concerns and interests and things that people raised. This is recorded that the council will be able to listen to. From here, it's going to go to the formal submittal where there will be public hearings. So you will have a second round attempt to talk to all the electeds about this submittal. And then the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then the final city hearing. Yes, and then the last slide. So just to make sure, there are comment cards. Feel free to fill out a comment card. If you forgot your comment card, feel free to email. So there's up there. There is also a website, so this will all be on the website. And comments received after the formal comment will be included in the permanent record. But remember, these are not formal comments yet because it's still tweaking. And make sure you signed in. That way we have your email address and we can send you any news updates or anything that's going on. So thank you all for letting me push you a little bit. I appreciate that. And thanks for coming tonight. I appreciate it. Thanks and good night.